And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. Still a great nation, despite the fact that there is a certain wave in public opinion that is cresting. The wave actually includes a demand for government support for marijuana dealers. I mean, saying that we need marijuana to be legal, well, that's one thing. But saying we need it to be subsidized by the government, that's a sickening and revolting possibility, isn't it? Jason Riley thinks so. We will be joined later this show by Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal. And meanwhile, the latest on Iran, America's current war, which is just passing the 60-day margin of its duration. And this was supposed to be a war that was going to be quick and over immediately. In fact, President Trump proclaimed it to be over some, 2 months ago. The latest on Iran, according to NBC, the president will be briefed today on options for the way ahead in the Strait of Hormuz and on the ground in Iran, according to a U.S. official familiar with the planning. That U.S. official very specifically indicated that the use of ground troops would be one of those things that is evaluated and considered. And given the fact that nobody knows where we're going in Iran right now, that's clearly appropriate. The CENTCOM commander, Admiral Brad Cooper, will personally brief Trump and the president's senior national security team at the White House. One assumes that includes both Secretary Rubio and Secretary Hegseth and other members of like the president's national security advisor, who happens to be Marco Rubio, in addition to his job as Secretary of State. Brad Cooper, CENTCOM Admiral, will be leading this briefing and will update all of the personnel who are close to the president and helping to shape policy. Will update them on the continued U.S. blockade of Iran's ports. By the way, there is a posting on Donald Trump's Truth Social account that shows a new map with Oman and the UAE and Iran, and shows what used to be known as the Strait of Hormuz, and it is now called the Strait of Trump. This, of course, an illusion, good-natured, put up there originally by Women for Trump. This obviously meant to reflect on Trump's desire, which doesn't appear to have gained too much energy, a desire to get the Gulf of Mexico renamed the Gulf of America. Has that caught on particularly? Don't think so. The update on the situation in Iran is coming after energy prices soared to their highest point in years, with little sign of a deal to end the war. Iran's new supreme leader, who has been very much hidden in the background, not made personal appearances anywhere, Iran's new supreme leader vowed in a message today that the Islamic Republic would protect its nuclear and missile capabilities as national assets. The defiant, written statement read on state television, because, again, they're not showing us images or any kind of live broadcasting indicating even that Mojtaba Khamenei is alive, let alone functioning as the supreme leader. He says Iran will protect its nuclear and missile capabilities as national assets. And the defiant written statement, says NBC, was the latest signal that Tehran is not about to capitulate in the standoff wreaking havoc on the global economy. The price of the international benchmark for oil, Brent crude, rose all the way up to more than $126 a barrel at one point overnight, the highest since 2022 when Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Wow, that was 2020, almost 4 years ago, before falling back to around $114 a barrel early today. Gas prices in the United States rose to an average of $4.30 a gallon today, also the highest in nearly 4 years. For some reason, the market seems to love it, not because of the price of oil, but because of a jobs report. The information indicates that the Dow is surging on a jobs report. At one point, the Dow was up some 700 points. Non-farm payrolls rose a seasonally adjusted 178,000 in March, a reversal from the 133,000 decline in February, and better, far better than the Dow Jones consensus estimate of 59,000. The unemployment rate urged lower to 4.3%, though that was largely from a sharp reduction in the labor force. In other words, there are people who had been looking for work and had given up. Wages also rose less than expected, which, depending on what you're looking for, is either good news or bad news. It's not good news for people who are dependent upon what they get every month in salaries. But in terms of people who are worried about inflation, yes, this is encouraging. Wages rose less than expected, with average hourly earnings up just 0.2% for the month and 3.5% from a year ago. The annual increase in wages was the lowest since May of 2021. As has been the case, healthcare was responsible for much of the growth, with the healthcare sector, adding 776,000 jobs. Back on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs Chairman, that's General Dan Kane. His nickname is Raisin Kane. Get it? Like raisin, like the little swollen grapes that you get. Okay, he's Raisin Kane. He was appearing together with Pete Hegseth before the Senate as the White House seeks a $1.5 trillion defense budget and big defense increases. Annual inflation rate, meanwhile, prices grew at a far more rapid rate in March as the war in Iran drove the annual inflation rate in March rose to 3.5%, as measured by the Personal Consumption Expenditures PCE price index, up from 2.3% in February. Now, all of this is very mixed and unclear in terms of where the prosperity index goes. But right now, there are reasons for Democrats to be very encouraged. They are running ahead in many of the polls. But there's a strong piece in the Wall Street Journal about why Republicans might surprise everyone and actually win these upcoming midterm elections. We will get to that and to more coming up on The Medved Show. And there is some good news to cover here on the Michael Medved Show. Good news both economically and culturally. Part of the good news culturally has to do, and maybe economically too, though that's less clear, has to do with an announcement just made by the Trump administration. The President of the United States has withdrawn the nomination of Dr. Casey Means for U.S. Surgeon General following a stalled, very contentious Senate confirmation process. She wasn't going to get confirmed. She is Stanford educated as a physician, but she has not had an active medical license. And having somebody without a medical license taking over as the Surgeon General of the United States seemed like a peculiar move. Means face scrutiny, they are reporting, over her lack of an active medical license, her prior departure from surgical residency, and her views on vaccines, which seem to echo those views of RHK. How many top medical personnel have been appointed and then dropped and then fired and then switched, and this for the Centers for Disease Control and throughout the whole Department of Health and Human Services, which is presided over by the fellow looking for dead animals out there on the highway. We're talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So they will be looking for a new Surgeon General, and I hope they can get one soon. And meanwhile, I talked about some good news. There's also some good news with name changes going on. And for instance, President Trump this week endorsed the idea of changing the name of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, to the National Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and adding that NICE. That makes it NICE, the NICE, instead of ICE. This would give the agency the acronym of NICE. The idea was promoted by conservative influencer Alyssa Marie last month. I want Trump to change ICE to NICE, National Immigration and Customs Enforcement, so the media will have to say NICE agents all day long, every day. That's what Marie wrote in a March post on social platform X. Great idea, do it, in capital letters, Trump wrote back in a Truth Social post. Other conservative influencers chimed in with statements of support. A federal agency name change typically requires congressional action through legislation to amend the statutory authority that established the agency. However, the Trump administration has sought to change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War without congressional buy-ins. And now they're also talking about changing the Strait of Hormuz to the Strait of Trump. We'll see about that. One more name change, acronym usage. This is from Mediaite. The Wall Street traders have now cooked up a new food-themed acronym for President Trump's Iran war deadlock. You've heard President Trump referred to as TACO. TACO stands generally for Trump Always Chickens Out, TACO. And what about Nacho? That would be the new Strait of Hormuz disruption acronym. The label has been reportedly emerging in trading circles where skepticism of the president's ability to reopen the strait, a key global energy trade route, is now such a trend that it merits its own code name. Bloomberg columnist Javier Blah, really that's his name, revealed Nacho on yesterday, citing a trader who told him the acronym now stands for Not a Chance Hormuz Opens. Well, we'll see about that. And also concerning the surprising economic news that many people are hailing as very positive right now, were CNBC's Rick Santelli on the brand new data that showed initial jobless claims last week fell to their lowest levels since 1969. This is clip 19.
Hi, Joe. It's pretty exciting, I think. Employment cost index, first quarter number, up 0.9, close to expectations. Up 0.9 would equal the second quarter of 25. To find a higher cost index, here the first quarter of 24. Initial jobless claims hitting the wires at 189,000. 189,000. Wow, that is truly incredible. We're looking at levels truly that we probably haven't seen since the late 60s. This is very, very incredible.
Okay, not everybody was celebrating. The NBC News host, Jim Cramer, said, yeah, these numbers are just bad. And somehow we think that bonds and rates are going up. They're barely going up because people still believe that all of this has to come down. And the inflation spiking to 3.5%, that is also not terribly encouraging good news. Meanwhile, there is more on President Trump and his prosecution. One could even say persecution of Jim Comey. When President Trump was asked about whether in the Oval Office, he was asked about whether he really thought that Comey was trying to kill him with that seashell arrangement. And it's an arrangement that Comey says he never even made. He just saw it on the beach. He didn't even make the arrangement himself. Coming up, we'll get to that 86-47 idea that this was a well-known, widely accepted mob term. Trump thinks so. Other people who've spent their careers actually prosecuting real-life mobsters disagree. We will get to that and get to the statement by leading people on the extreme right who don't like Zionists. We'll get to that and more on the Medved Show.
The Michael Medved Show.
Listen.
Nationwide.
Listen.
And around the world at michaelmedved.com.
And listen.
Well, it still makes a headline today. The headline, Comey appears in federal court after DOJ, Department of Justice, indictment. And James Comey, the former FBI director, made his first court appearance yesterday after being charged over a photograph of seashells he had posted on social media that the Justice Department branded a serious threat to President Donald Trump. Comey, who is a longtime critic of Trump, appeared in federal court in Virginia, in Alexandria, Virginia, for a brief, largely procedural appearance before a judge. He was indicted Tuesday by a federal grand jury in North Carolina on 2 counts of making a threat against the president and transmitting a threat across state lines. It was the second time the administration has brought these charges against him, signaling a renewed effort by the Justice Department to pursue Trump's rivals. The Comey did not speak before the magistrate judge, William Fitzpatrick, but nodded along as he was reminded of his rights and the charges against him. The judge addressed mainly administrative matters, including the conditions of Comey's release, during which he referred to the last time Comey appeared at the federal court in Alexandria over the first indictment for the same thing that the Justice Department brought against him. The judge said, I don't think conditions of release are necessary, he said, shaking his head. His tone and manner were brusque. They weren't necessary last time, he added. They are not necessary this time. In other words, he doesn't see that James Comey is a big threat to try to assassinate President Trump. But President Trump, by the way, the entire legal procedure that we were just described in the New York Times, that procedure took less than 10 minutes. But President Trump disagrees. He thinks, and said in the White House yesterday, that James Comey is a real danger because he took a picture of the seashells on the shore and they spelled out the numbers 8647. Here's the president explaining why this is such a dangerous thing.
Do you really think that he was endangering your life or threatening your life with that?
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill 'em. You know? You ever see the movies? 86 'em. The mobster says to one of his wonderful associates, 86 'em. That means kill 'em. It's, I think of it as a mob term. I don't know, people think of it as something having to do with disappearing, but the mob uses that term to say when they want to kill somebody, they say 86, the son of a gun. I'm trying to keep the language nice and clear. They don't use that term, son of a gun. They use another term. But that's a mob term for kill them. Yeah.
But do you really think your life was in danger?
Probably. I don't know. You know, based on what I'm seeing out there, yeah, the people like Comey have created tremendous danger, I think, for politicians and others.
Okay, there's a actual former mob prosecutor named Eli Honig who works on CNN, and he spoke on CNN about President Trump arguing that 8647 was Comey using mob terminology. This is Eli Honig, clip 20.
There was a point in my life where I spent the better part of my waking hours either talking face-to-face with real-world mobsters or listening to them talk to each other over wiretaps or body wires or bugs. I dealt with all five families: Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Lucchese, Colombo. I dealt with bosses, underbosses, consiglieres, capos, soldiers, associates, all the way down the line. Never, ever, not once did I hear any real-world gangster use the term 86 to refer to a murder or anything. And God knows these guys had colorful lingo, but never that phrase 86. I don't know where the president getting this from. He said from some movie. They don't use that term in Godfather or Sopranos or Goodfellas, maybe some way old-timey movie, but that's not reality. The other piece of the interview you did, Caitlin, with the president in the Oval Office that I found really interesting, when you asked that follow-up, did you truly believe your life was in danger? The first thing he said was, probably, I don't know. And then he sort of eventually said, well, I guess so, yeah. Probably, I don't know, right there, that's an acquittal because prosecutors have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim believed that his life was in jeopardy. And if the jury comes back at probably, I don't know, that's a not guilty right there. I thought that was a really important moment.
This is entire situation is somewhat laughable. And there's also comments from another former federal prosecutor, Barrett Berger, who was on with Anderson Cooper. Here's Berger, on former prosecutor on the Comey case, clip 16.
If they had actually believed that he was a threat to the president of the United States, it's kind of inconceivable that they would have allowed him to just for the last year be out on his own.
Right, which is exactly the right argument that he would make about why there was no credible investigation taking place over the last year. There's no chance that the government and the law enforcement would let somebody who was a real threat exist in the world, have a public platform, have the opportunity to potentially make other threats for a year. That doesn't happen. And it just goes to show that, you know, you have to say that there's an actual credible threat here, that it's not just words that, oh, maybe somebody, that a reasonable person would take as a threat. If even the Secret Service wasn't thinking that this rang of a true threat, how can we convince 12 jurors that this was really a true threat?
Well, how can you convince 12 jurors that James Comey represents a true threat? Not because he arranged those numbers on the beach, but because he found those numbers on the beach that someone else had arranged and took a picture of it and posted it. All extraordinary. The Congress voted to reopen key parts of the Department of Homeland Security, including the Transportation Security Administration. This is today, after weeks of GOP infighting that prolonged a record shutdown of the critical agency. The bill to fund the department, which has gone unfunded for 75 days, now goes to President Donald Trump for his signature. And I think that signature is actually likely to occur. Meanwhile, what about the other war? Not the war involving Iran and the United States, but the other war, the war involving Republicans and Democrats when it comes to apportionment, when it comes to how you are going to elect, how we are going to elect the next Congress of the United States, when all 435 seats are up. But the seats have been changing, and now there is a new apportionment, a new map that was actually just approved by the Florida legislature, which is overwhelmingly Republican. And the new map was backed by Ron DeSantis. The Florida legislature approved a new congressional map intended to maximize Republicans' advantage in the state as part of that national redistricting battle that President Donald Trump launched before this year's midterms. So where does that battle stand right now? And what are the key issues? I'm not sure there are any that are really involved. We will get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
Sign up today for our free weekly newsletter at michaelmedved.com.
And no, it doesn't involve changing the names, naming anything after President Trump. There have been a lot of things named after him recently, and some of the discussion concerning the new passports, which for the first time ever include the image of a sitting president of the United States. People who were former presidents, dead presidents, sure, but President Trump's face on a passport that you can make special attention to get if you want to see Trump's scowling face, and it is a scowl on that image, then you actually have to go to Washington and apply for it, but then you can get a special new passport. Well, is there a passport to power being acknowledged and minted in Florida? That's one of the questions concerning the midterm elections that are coming up. The Florida legislature approved a new congressional map intended to maximize Republicans' advantage in the state as part of the national redistricting battle that President Donald Trump launched before this year's midterm. He did it first by creating 5 new, likely all Republican states in Texas. And now Florida, the other biggest red state in the country in terms of population. The DeSantis map could increase Republicans' advantage in Florida's House delegation to 24-4. Now, it's not clear at all that Florida is that much a Republican-tilted state. The House delegation is currently 20-8, 20 Republicans, 8 Democrats. The potential 4-seat gain is the same as what Virginia Democrats expect from a recent redistricting referendum, which is being challenged in state court there. The referendum was voted on by the people of Virginia. It won by about 3 points, so it was very close. This is not going to the people. It's not going for a popular vote. It's just the Republicans in the state legislature. A Democrat who's named as Michelle Rayner, she's a Democrat from St. Petersburg, she said, "You all are doing this because you all's daddy in the White House is injecting national political objectives into what should be a state-driven process." So said Michelle Rayner, Democrat, St. Petersburg. She told her Republican colleagues before that 83-28 vote in favor of the measure. The Florida Senate was much closer. It later approved the plan in a 21-17 vote. But meanwhile, the whole idea of this continuing reshuffling of the electoral deck before the midterm is confusing to people, and I think it is helping to undermine on both sides the confidence, if there is any left, that the public and the prospective voters have for the people who are making these decisions. Is it going to help turnout in the upcoming election, or is it going to help depress turnout in the upcoming election? And who knows? Maybe the Republicans, who are investing a great deal of energy in this, are right to assume that a smaller turnout would actually work to the Republicans' advantage. Right now, that seems to be the case because all of the polling shows that more Democrats are excited about actually voting in this election than are Republicans. Meanwhile, two Republicans who spoke about an upcoming primary in Kentucky had a way of getting people excited about the election. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson were talking with each other, and they made it clear that two things. Number one, that they have absolutely no understanding or comprehension or hint of a realization of what it means to be a, quote, Zionist. And number two, even more clearly, that Tucker and MTG don't like Zionists at all. Here's what their conversation sounded like, clip 18.
Ed Galrin won't even show up to debate Thomas Massie. Like, that's it's like campaign 101. If you're running for Congress, you should be able to show up to a debate in your district in front of the people that you're wanting to vote for you. And you should be able to show up in person and stand in front of a microphone and a camera against your opponent and address why you will be a better representative than the current representative, Thomas Massie. And Ed Galrin has not shown up to a single one. As far as my knowledge, he hasn't shown up at all. And by the way, he's completely funded by three Zionist billionaires, 100% funded, that have given tens of millions of dollars, and they don't even live in his district. They couldn't relate to Kentucky. That they only know about Tel Aviv. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen.
Unbelievable thing she's ever seen. What does it mean to be a Zionist millionaire or billionaire, as she is suggesting? This has to do with a battle between Ed Galrin, who is a former Navy SEAL, is a fifth-generation farmer in his Kentucky district, and is running with President Trump's endorsement against Thomas Massie, who has been very outspoken against the war in Iran. And by the way, being outspoken in terms of critical of the way the administration is handling the war, running the war, is one thing. But actually suggesting that it would be a better thing if the war ended with a victory for Iran, that is a more questionable proposition, and questionable whether it's put forward by Tucker Carlson, who was in conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene there, or not. By the way, being a Zionist, if you are a Zionist, you believe in the Zionist dream, which was first put forward in the 1890s by Theodore Herzl, which is that the Jewish people, as the indigenous people of that part of the Middle East, deserve their own country. It has nothing to do with believing in superior privileges or special power or special anything. It has to do with including the Jewish people with all the other peoples of the world who have a national aspiration, an aspiration for a state of their own. And that notion that there are Zionist billionaires who are behind the Republican challenge for the nomination in Kentucky of the congressional seat held by Thomas Massie, that is a different thing entirely. There is also more going on with members of Congress and Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth and the chief of staff of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. They are spending today in conversation with the Senate. Yesterday, there was a very grueling and revealing interchange between members of the House Armed Services Committee, and Pete Hegseth, the would-be, in his own mind, Secretary of War. What did we learn about the current state of the war? Well, not that much because of the nature of the interchanges there. And then there is also an upcoming interview about Iran and the new ballroom and more, with a tantalizing possibility that could change American politics. What's the setting? The setting is Senator John Fetterman, a senator from Pennsylvania, who is a member of the Democratic caucus, but is particularly popular among Republicans. And where does that lead? We will get to that and more, and including whether government should help subsidize marijuana dealers. That with Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal. That and more coming up in This Greatest Nation on God's green earth.